Hi, welcome back. Welcome to the audio version of my book, Free Will, my memoir. My name is Jill, and I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome back to all those that are following along chapter by chapter. We are on chapter 41 today, and when we left off, I had started a business with my dad. I had had surgery. I had moved again for the third time in about a year and a half. So a lot of crazy changes and things going on all the time. So now I'm going to talk about just some of the realities of adjusting to single life, non witness life, and all the changes that had happened. So, welcome, and we'll just jump right in. Okay. Me and my dad's store did really well at the first year, and even better the second year. It was a success for all intents and purposes. But by the middle of the third year, there was no two ways about it. I was bored out of my gourd. In the busy season, I would work 6 or 7 days a week. In the slow season, I was there 5 or 6 days a week too. I was so proud of the store and what it had become. I really did enjoy the work, but it was feeling monotonous. That might not have mattered except for the fact that I had no social life. In the 2.5 years I had been there, between running the store and taking care of the house and the kids, I didn't have much time for hobbies or play. The extent of my social calendar consisted of watching TV after most nights. I took my walks on the beach before work. I would go hiking or do gardening on my time away from the store. If I wasn't ordering merchandise and doing the books, I tried to get involved at the local tennis club, but it was too hard to coordinate with my busy work schedule. I really hadn't made any friends. Yes, I was working a lot, so that kept me busy, but I couldn't believe I was not finding any community here beyond my family members. My favorite place to hang out when I wasn't working was a cool little metaphysical store called the Crystal Wizard. The Crystal Wizard is owned by a lovely lady called Chris. She turned this cool house in the forest of Glen Eden Beach into an amazing shop. It is truly a magical place. Sometimes there were events at the store like drum circles or meditations, so that was something I did enjoy. But these little events were rarities. I'd love to just hang out in the Crystal Wizard to buy crystals, candles, jewelry, or oracle cards. I met a few friends there, but none that I spent very much time with. That was the closest that I had gotten to having any circle of friends while in Oregon. My personal experience unveiled that there is definitely a stigma in Oregon about people who move there from California. I had heard about it from my dad before I moved here, but I thought, I'm such an outgoing social butterfly. I know I'll meet some interesting people and be having fun in no time. I was wrong. Not only was it difficult to connect with people, I actually had a lady tell me while I was working, "Oh, don't tell anyone you're from California. We don't like Californians." I couldn't believe it was that blatant. But it partially explained to me why I wasn't fitting in anywhere. I get it. The quiet, undisturbed peace of the Oregon coast is so sweet. It's probably threatening and unnerving to have outsiders coming in and overcrowd the place. But coming on the heels of being shunned by my former community of Jehovah's Witnesses, I took it hard. I tried not to take it personally, but I was still battered and bruised from all that I had lost. So it felt like further rejection, like another generous helping of feeling like an outsider, like someone unwelcome and unnoticed. Looking back, I can see that a part of me was keeping to myself unconsciously. I think intuitively I knew I had so much healing to do. I think I was putting up a protective barrier to keep myself cocooned while I healed and began my transformation to my new existence. But because I felt a bit isolated and lonesome for fun and friends, I did regularly work at being kind with myself. My spiritual quest had taught me already that it was important to be kind to myself. I had learned from motivational author Louise Hay, and then from many other spiritual teachers, to watch how I talk to myself inside my head. I broke the old habit of saying things in my mind like, I'm so stupid, why can't I get things right, etc. But this new terrain warranted me being extra vigilant about not doing that. One of the many spiritual teachers that I read and listened to, Matt Kahn, says, say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to a 5-year-old child who's in pain. I highly recommend trying this. It helped me see that at times I was still being harsh and even downright cruel to myself. I used to be that little child. I deserve the same kindness, tenderness, and compassion. It feels ridiculous and kind of embarrassing and unnatural to say nice things to yourself if you haven't ever done it. But when I paid attention to the voice in my head, I could hear it demean me. I heard myself say cruel things to me that I would have never said to another person. I had to reconsider. I was worthy of kindness and patience. I deserved gentleness and forgiveness. This was critical for my survival at this time. Being in this subtly unwelcoming place felt like another rejection. I consciously reassured myself that I was likable, even a lovable person, irrespective of the fact that I couldn't make friends here. I also had not dated much, which brought in more doubt about my worthiness. So I had to make a deliberate decision to be happy and do whatever it took to stay that way. My consistent self-education had awakened me to the fact that maybe me being alone and isolated might be happening for a reason. I had always been such a people person. I had no aversion to being alone, but I had spent much of my time, whether working or playing, interacting with friends and family. That sentence didn't make sense. I had no aversion to being alone, but I had spent most of my time, whether working or playing, interacting with friends and family. I cherished the laughter, the conversations, the exchange, and pleasure I'd always enjoyed with a large assortment of companions to choose from. But I had chosen to be here. With my newly claimed free will, I had chosen everything. My intuition had brought me here to where I would be solitary in many ways. I believed it was vital to not only accept that I would be alone for a while, but that it was crucial for me to make the best of it and even find benefit in being solitary. In doing so, I found I enjoyed my own company. I had more time for meditation, for quiet and stillness. Peace was paramount to me, and I had that. I had time to write, time to sleep, time to paint and draw, and time to heal. Discovering the possibility that the solitude was actually for my benefit, that it would help me to grow, evolve, and heal, warmed me to the idea. But that didn't happen overnight. I kept hanging on to wanting things to go the way I expected, the way I thought I wanted. I kept waiting and looking for friends to hang out with, to party with. It seems like it would be simple to let go of old thoughts and beliefs and habits, especially those that no longer serve you. But these benefits and values had carved their own path into my brain. They were what I thought I was, an intrinsic part of my being. So as simple as it sounds to say, just look at it differently, just shift your perspective, it was anything but easy. I slowly warmed to the idea that solitude would be good for me. I started letting go of the need for a big social life. I allowed seclusion to be my friend, to find the richness in the peaceful quiet. I wasn't waiting in the weeds. I wasn't on the boulevard of broken dreams, though it felt like it at times. Instead, I tried to view it like I was languishing in the lush, tranquil, undisturbed serenity. Spending time in nature was one of the purest and most powerful teachers and comforts. Walking through a forest of trees alone and listening to the sound of my own breath, to birds, or the simple snap of the twigs and leaves underfoot. Hearing the raindrops hitting the elephant ear-sized leaves was therapeutic. Nature kept me in the moment. Listening to music took its usual place in my life, but now it also served to heal me. Blasting tunes in my car or while I walked down the beach gave me ease, pleasure, and stimulation. In my house or my store, bumping the tunes and breaking out in my own personal dance party made joy and relief rain down on me. So that was just like a little chapter on some of the little baby steps that began happening to adjust. I had been living as a JW, this, especially in the last years, this life of just constant fun and travel and parties and play and resorts and lots of people and lots of laughter. And I kind of just thought, oh, I'll just kind of do a mellower version of that as a single person. But that's not what happened. But slowly accepting that, I was reaching out for something that didn't really want anyway, but I thought that's what I was supposed to be going for. So that was just a little interesting adjustment I had to make in my thinking in the beginning. I was sort of like feeling a little victim-y, feeling a little sorry for myself, a little lonely. So it turned out those quiet years were so good for me, so good in so many ways. And now we are going on to the next chapter, which this is a little shift. This is definitely the chapter that was hardest for me to write. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say anything about it. We're kind of like taking a detour back to the beginning when I first decided I really wasn't going to be a witness and what was really happening in detail back then. So, chapter 42. Okay. Although my freshly untethered life was chock full of peace, calm, and serenity, the shrapnel of the church's bullshit and loss of so much would pummel me unexpectedly. Months before I had even decided to move to Oregon, things had changed dramatically with respect to the relationship I had with my mom. When I stopped going to JW Church, I tried to stay on the down low about it. There are so many people that realize the JW Church isn't for them, but they also recognize that to say so honestly could ruin your life. So when you leave the church and you start reading about what other former Jehovah's Witnesses do to get out without losing all their friends and loved ones, it sounds like a much wiser and less painful course of action. It's called fading, and I tried hard to do it. That is easier said than done, though. At the time, I tried to just lay low and not make any issues or ruffle any feathers, so as to not arouse suspicion. But the simple act of not attending church meetings is enough to generate curiosity in many and concern in others. After months of not attending, I began to get a few phone calls asking if I was ill or if everything was okay. I usually went with We've been so busy, life's been crazy, kind of vague, elusive comeback. This worked for a while, but family is too close. They know too much. I had already exclaimed to my mom that I wasn't going back to meetings the night of the infamous ice skating debacle. But she wouldn't have believed that statement. You see, this organization wraps you in so tight that it's unfathomable to those that have been in it their whole life that anyone would ever choose to leave it. I myself, when I was in deep, thought that when people choose to leave the organization, that they would always come back because they have to know it's the truth. Ha ha. Then I found out what they found out and never wanted to come back. So though my mom knew I wasn't attending meetings, she kept acting as if I was still in it. And to be truthful, that was okay with me at the time because shunning had not ensued. But then mom started catching me out at times that would give me up. Once I had been out of the church long enough to know I wasn't coming back, guess what one of the first JW rules I broke was? Celebrating holidays. I love them. Parties, dress up, decorating, lights. So fun. I hadn't had this for my entire life, and I started making up for lost time. The first Halloween was a thrill. The kids dressed up for their first time and went out trick-or-treating with their friends. We were definitely a little paranoid about Jehovah's Witnesses driving by and seeing the jack-o'-lanterns on our front porch, but we took our chances. We had way more candy than we needed, but couldn't wait to hand it out. I had just given out Smarties and Whoppers to a gold robot and a Dorothy and Toto when I got a phone call from my mom. She lived a good 2 hours away in the desert, but as we spoke, I realized she was really close by, and she said she'd like to stop by and visit. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. I felt like I was a 10-year-old about to get caught smoking cigarettes. I called the kids and told them not to come back to the house in their costumes until I called them later to tell them the coast was clear. I pulled in the pumpkins, hid them, and hid the candy. Mom showed up about 10 minutes later. Whew. She was disappointed the kids weren't there. I made up a half-truth about them being out to dinner with some friends. I was a nervous wreck, feeling we would be found out. So it was an awkward visit, short and sweet, and then she left. We came out unscathed on that one. But these situations kept coming up. I don't know for sure, but I thought maybe my mom was intentionally checking up on us to see how far out we'd gone. The occasion that everything came out was just a few short weeks later, the following Christmas season. It was the first Christmas we had ever celebrated. We actually drove out of town to purchase our tree and accoutrements because we were still in fear of being caught in the act of breaking JW rules. Sounds ridiculous, but when you realize the consequences of being caught red-handed, the fear is not unfounded. We had gotten a huge tree that we quickly smuggled into the house, trimmed it with all of our brand new ornaments and lights. Although being a first-timer, I got a little carried away with the tinsel. The tree vaguely reminded me of an old tired stripper before I decided to pare it down for a more subtle classic look. Being an interior designer, I took to Christmas decorations with reckless abandon. Of course, we still kept things to the inside of the house, afraid of the fallout of Jehovah's Witnesses witnessing our heathendom, as they view it. We had even planned a little Christmas party with a handful of newly found friends. Then again, out of the blue, my mom called to say she was going out of town for a few days at the end of December and wanted to know if we could babysit her dog while she was gone. She also said she'd like to spend at our house the night before she left on the 24th, Christmas Eve, the night of our party. Awkward! In that moment, I said yes, but said that I'd have to get back to her to confirm because I thought we might be going up to the mountains to take the kids to the snow. I panicked. It was the only thing I could think of. After I hung up, I gave it a lot of thought. I was lying now, no longer just avoiding and hiding, but straight up lying. I hated this. I was so close to my mom. We used to have the kind of relationship where we talked every day. We told each other everything. It was an exceptionally special mother-daughter relationship that I didn't take for granted. Even though our relationship had begun to taper a bit, lying to her felt alien and felt wrong. I decided to write her a letter. This letter would change everything. In retrospect, if I ask myself why I had to write it, why I had to take the chance on possibly losing one of the most significant and beloved people in my life, well, it's easy to answer. Easy to answer, but unquestionably the most difficult, frightening, and painful part of being true to myself for the first time in my life. I wanted to finally tell her how I felt. I wanted to come clean. I had pivoted in who I was. I no longer valued placating above honesty. I no longer had the capacity or desire to hide who I was. I spent hours carefully wording my truths. I wanted to be gentle, kind, and respectful to her. I did not want to hurt her, but I knew telling her that I did not believe the Jehovah's Witnesses religion was the truth was going to be brutal for her. So I soft-pedaled as much as I could. It was a long, gingerly written letter. I said that I didn't believe in it, but I didn't say why. I said that I was celebrating holidays now. I said I didn't want to hurt her, but that I couldn't keep pretending. It took all the courage I could muster to pop that sucker in the mailbox, but I did, and just prayed that it would be well. Waiting for her to receive that letter was excruciating. Even though the letter should have arrived one day, I did not hear from her for days afterwards. I did hear from a distant family member that she had taken my letter to the elders in her congregation to ask advice. When she finally called me, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot behind our computer store. The air felt heavy, like it was too thick to breathe it in. I braced myself as I answered. She said she'd gotten the letter, but that she didn't believe I truly felt that way. She pressed me to know why, to explain how I could possibly want to doom myself and my children to death at Armageddon. I could hear the fear in her voice. It sounded like anger. I pleaded with her to not ask me why. I told her she would not like the answers. She pressed further. In the end, she told me that I had made myself an apostate by telling her what I had told her. Being an apostate in the JW eyes is the worst you can be. In their reasoning, if you knew the truth and then reject it, you're worse than someone who is ignorant to this supposed truth. Therefore, my mom informed me that she could no longer associate with me. She said she'd like to see the kids, but that it might be awkward since she can no longer speak to me. My kids have not seen or heard from her since. Take a breath. She held true to her stance. She does not speak to me unless there is a crisis, like someone being in the hospital or something. I gotta get a drink. Okay. In the beginning, I was numb to this. I knew it was coming, but I was truly shocked when my mom took such a firm stand on this. I know many other former JWs who have family in the church that does still include them, at least minimally in their lives. My mom was always a strict JW, so I guess it made sense that she applied the discipline strictly. They believe that as an apostate you are mentally diseased, that you seek to infect others with your beliefs. So truthfully, I can see how the fear-inducing propaganda keeps her far from me. Once the Novocaine wore off, I was hurt and angry that my mom left my life. I know she believes that I was the one who left, but all I did was tell the truth. I couldn't lie anymore. The hurt was deep, especially for my kids. They were very close to Grandma. They had lost all their JW friends, which was a painful mindfuck for them. And now their grandma was gone. I was devastated, but generally kept myself distracted from it, or so I thought. One Monday evening, I was going to my Sixth Sense class, and I decided to get a psychic reading from my teacher, Barbara, beforehand. She told me many things that night. For the most part, it was very enlightening and interesting. Then we broached the subject of my mom. I asked her why, and will things ever change? To my surprise, Barbara firmly told me, let go. She said I needed to stop dwelling on this. She recommended doing a ritual of burning a white candle, taking all my writings about my mom, letter to my mom, and burn them all. She said to give it to the universe to take the burden of pain from me. I was furious. Let go? Let go of my mom? The woman who raised me? The woman who taught me how to love? Who comforted me when I was hurt? Giggled with me for hours every time we were together? I was so close to her. I respect her and cherish her. She had always been my bastion of comfort and safety. How was I supposed to let go? I vowed not to go to my class that night, or maybe ever again. Obviously, Barbara had no clue. I left the bookstore and went across the way to a home goods store to buy something for one of my design jobs. I stood in line holding two oversized, beautiful candlesticks. Giant tears welled up in my eyes and rolled over my cheeks. I was instantly crying so hard. I abandoned the candlesticks in a nearby bin and rushed to my car, wiping tears on my sleeves and then with an old receipt from my purse in lieu of a tissue. As I tearfully purged the loss, I realized Barbara was right. Sobbing, I knew if I couldn't let go, I would relive this pain eternally. I knew I had to accept what really was, so it wouldn't turn me bitter. I instantly realized that Barbara had given me an immeasurable gift in telling me this hard truth. I went back to class that night. I was quiet and kept to myself. The next day, I printed out every bit of writing about my mom shunning me. I printed a copy of the letter I had sent her, the letter that changed everything. I deleted them all from my computer. I took the hard copies out to the backyard and placed them in the fire pit. I lit the fire and lit my white candle. I prayed to the universe to take this pain from me, to take anger and hurt and frustration so that I no longer had to dwell in that rejection. The little black paper bits swirled in the pit, some floating up and away gently on the wind. The wind carried with it a part of me. I felt a shift. I felt like my spirit lifted instantly. This act of letting go altered everything for me. It lightened me, whether because of the ceremony or maybe just the intention behind it. I could feel how I no longer carried a heavy anchor of heartache. Yes, I had lost my mom. It was brutal, unparalleled pain, but it was time to move forward. It's a really surreal loss when you no longer have someone that you love so much in your life, but they're not dead. People don't usually grasp how deep of a loss it is when you said that I have a mother, but we don't speak. There is not a lot of comfort available for this loss. Usually when we lose someone we love, other loved ones gather around to comfort us. This was not like that. She was gone for me. No one acknowledged, "I'm so sorry for your loss," or asked, "How are you doing?" I had to muddle through and figure it out. Thousands of people who leave that church must grapple with this. We each figure it out on our own. Having the online support group helped me so much, but even that became something I had to let go of so as not to keep wallowing. Over and over again, I have had to continue to let go. As I have moved on with my life, gotten divorced, moved away, started a business, I have missed my mom having my mom to talk to comfort me, to laugh with me. After moving to Oregon and opening my business, I was working 7 days a week and getting things kicked off. I was exhausted. I had moved far away. I was newly divorced. I was working nonstop. My kids were suffering with depression and anxiety. I was feeling so alone. I drove myself to the store one morning, and out of nowhere, tears brimmed on my lashes. In that second, I started screaming. Now, when I say screaming, I mean gut-wrenching, at the top of my lungs screaming. These screams came from a place inside me that I didn't know existed. I was in a blind rage and had to yank my car to the side of the road because I couldn't even see. Shaking and screaming, "Why? What's wrong with me? I want my mom. I want my mommy." So much loss culminates in shattering things inside. You have to keep going, keep working, and keep being a mom. I think that hysterical screaming was a moment of healing. I needed to get that shattered shit out of me. That was the first time that my body did that, but it wasn't the last. No amount of intellect or reasoning can resolve why someone so dear, someone so sacred to me, could eject me from her life. The main comfort that I had grown to trust, to count on as a baby, as a child, as an adolescent, as a grown woman, it had always been Mom. She was my soft place to fall. She was my sounding board. She was my safe place to find tender comfort. She was my anchor, my safety net. She was gone. Now, years later, when I'm missing her, I take a deep breath, close my eyes, and remember some beautiful moment with her. The memories of such a lovely mother are cherished gems that I take out and polish from time to time. In my morning meditation, I often send her loving thoughts and wish her peace and happiness. I wish so much that I could have her back, but I did have her for 46 years. She was amazing. I still believe that she has a pure heart filled with love and that she is doing what she thinks is right. I love her and am so appreciative of the years we were in each other's lives. At times, I have felt like a mute person trying to articulate to anyone how it feels to lose a mom that was so loving, so tender, so affectionate, so kind, to lose her as if she's passed away. Yet she lives every day, and so do I, in another place far away from her. She is not dead, and neither am I. Yet I can't call her when I'm sad. I can't text her when something good happens. I can't ask her advice. I can't plan to take a trip to see her. And she will never come to visit me. Yet I still love her. In the handful of times that I have spoken to her in the last several years, like when she had a heart attack and was in the hospital, or when I had surgery, I welcome the conversation. I view it like a tiny window barely cracked open. I lean down to breathe in the familiar air. I can't try to open the window and let it all in because I'm not welcome in her life. I am sequestered to the minimum allowance. I am grateful for it, truly, but I armor myself not to be hurt. I stay away from topics that will shut it down completely. I try to be as respectful of her beliefs, even though I am not allotted the same from her. I would love to hold out hope that one day we can have a relationship again, but I know all too well how the religion works, and know it's very unlikely that will ever happen in this life. But through my own spiritual quest, I have learned enough to give myself the belief that we do communicate on some level. I send her love in the way that I can, and actually feel sometimes that she's thinking of me. Recently, while in deep meditation, I was with my mom. It was momentary and fleeting, but I tasted just for a quick moment, once again being with her and in her good graces. It was amazing and so surreal. I know we are connected in spirit. I even feel that we probably knew each other before we came to this earthly life. I believe we will be together in spirit again. Intellectually, I understand why it is the way it is, and that does make it easier, but it's not easy. Time does take out the sting, but just like when someone dies, it takes years to accept and adjust to the loss. This is like that, but different. It took me a long time to figure out how to mourn a living person, one of the most important people in my world. I'm still working on it, still adjusting. So that was for sure the hardest thing I wrote, but I kind of knew the whole time I was writing my book that that chapter was going to be a rough one to tackle. And it's kind of interesting how I take till the end of the book. Practically, it's not the end of the book yet, but till I really dove into it. And I needed so much to somehow try to articulate to people somewhere close to the feeling of what it was like. And I know so many of you that are watching this right now have lost family members. It could be a child, it could be a parent, it could be multiple people that you lost. I mean, that was the case for me. My mom was just the toughest one because we were exceptionally close and we had a lot of fun together. We liked each other a lot. And if you saw my first chapter video, then you know my mom recently had a stroke. And when I went to see her at the hospital, a couple things happened. I had to go to the hospital a handful of times. And the first time I went into the emergency room, it's so rough with COVID right now. Like, hospitals only let one person in at a time, and kind of a big ordeal getting in there. But when I walked into the emergency room, my mom's whole body lunged out of her bed towards me, and she grabbed my hands and held my hand. It was pretty major. Sorry. I really want to do this because I think it's important. And then we had a meeting with her medical team when she was leaving the hospital with my brothers. You know, before this had happened, I hadn't seen or spoken to my brothers in 12 years. And my sister was there too. And I very bravely, very boldly went and sat right next to my mom. And she grabbed my hand and held it the whole meeting. And, you know, you cherish those moments because I know that the soul, the person she is inside, I know she loves me. I know she's in a high control organization that she's been in for 75 plus years. And, you know, she wants to stay faithful to that. So as much as I hate it, as much as it hurts, as much as it's so hard to handle it, at the same time, I'd never hate her. And I actually will cherish those few little moments that I had with her, of her taking my hand and expressing her love in the way that she felt like she could for a while. And then, I mean, I think I also expressed to you that as we brought her home and everything, I was sensing that I was making her nervous and making her feel uncomfortable. And, you know, my sister has kind of confirmed, you know, because my sister's taking care of her a lot of the time. You know, she wants to be in a household with Jehovah's Witnesses, and she wants Jehovah's Witnesses taking care of her. So, you know, we're respecting that. And it's really, really not an easy path. It doesn't just resolve, you know, you don't just get over it. Unfortunately, it can come right back in and really do a number on you. So that being said, my heart goes out to all of you guys, because I know so many of you have had similar types of loss. And you know, sending you my love and hoping that you guys are all really good to yourselves, because like that chapter before this last one, that was, I think, the most important thing I've learned in life, is to be good to myself and be kind, be nurturing. We'll go more into that in the next few chapters and stuff, but I hope I have the courage to post this after watching myself crying on camera. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Love you guys.